Little entitled crap eats crab in aquarium store and mum defends him. Alright boys and girls, this seems super unbelievable, but when you have been working in the pet trade as a sales associate for long enough in weird areas, you start to see your fair share of entitled kids and shit-stained parents. My first of many stories, so don't be too harsh. For context, I work at a mum and pop pet store in the eastern US, and while my expertise is in aquatics, I try to be a jack of all trades. The day that this happened was rather uneventful until this point, all up until little shit, oh Jesus, and PF entered the store. My store was pretty modest, so it was fairly easy to see customers come in and out, especially in the fish department, so I got first look at this magnificent creature. A 40-something-year-old woman talking on her cell. Her hair obviously dyed blonde, and outfit practically screaming in midlife crisis, while her child was in tow. The kid must have been 7 or 8. The kid playing on his Switch. His shirt covered in what looked like a mixture of pizza sauce, soda, and plenty of mystery stains. At first, things were pretty normal. The kid originally not caring about anything in the store, while PF was getting enraged at him for not paying attention, though that changed rather fast. PF and LS were near the ferrets when PF took LS's Switch, immediately causing a reaction of screaming and pouting before being distracted by some of the fish over in my department. Alright, a bit of unnecessary information, but the way my store's fish department is set up is that 2/5 is fresh water, 2/5 is equipment, and the rest is salt water. Given we weren't really known for salt water, we only kept pretty generic yet sought after fish, like hippo tangs, various clownfish, 6-line wrasses, etc. The thing about the first two is because of Finding Nemo, kids are always drawn to the Dories or Nemos. Alright, that all in mind, the first thing LS did was head over to the small assortment of hippo tangs we had, practically pressing his shit-covered face against the glass as he yelled out "Dory" as loud as he could. PF held me down from algae scrubbing, and this started the encounter. I like to act casual around the workplace, as I find it lowers any sort of anxiety a customer has, and makes me way more approachable. First thing out of my mouth was, "Hey there, how's your night going? Need help with something?" PF started out our encounter with a roll of the eyes before pointing to the tang and demanding a price with a simple but rude, "How much for this thing?" After shifting gears from a casual standing to a more professional one, I simply told her the tang was $160. He was a good sized tang. Of course she scoffed, but what came next was a bit more worrying. PF pulled out $30 from her purse and placed it on the desk we used to bag fish, saying in an aggravated tone, "PF, that's all you're getting. Bag him." Things start to go poorly from here. It's worth noting that it was 9:15 at this point, the store having closed 15 minutes ago, though we make it policy not to ask customers to leave until 9:30. It was just my manager and myself at this point. My manager in the office closing down registers, so essentially it was like I was the only employee in the store. Seeing PF place the $30 on the table, I raised an eyebrow before leaning against the wall, simply asking her, "Do you have a saltwater tank?" She didn't take this well. She screamed without a second passing, "None of your fucking business, now bag my fish, you cocky little shit." I simply refused and slid her $30 back towards her before she slid it back, now more pissed off. "I'm going to get your ass fired if you don't bag my fish right now." At this, LS was getting pissed at the interaction, screaming like a banshee about how he wanted the tang, still referring to it as Dory, and beginning to stomp his feet in a tantrum. Soon enough, I was asking them to leave. So this is where I fucked up. I should have called the cops at this point, knowing that she wasn't going to leave without a fight. Ellis was on the floor at this point, pounding his fist to the floor, snot dripped down his face as PF tried to guilt me. "Sorry sweetie, this guy doesn't want you to have the fish. He's perfectly fine with you having no fish, friend, to make you happy." At this point she turned back up to me. "Do you see what you did, you stupid fuck? You're breaking my angel's heart because you're being too much of a Jew to sell me the fish." Internally I was laughing. This kind of situation happened now and again, but the anti-Semitism was a new one. I'd figured everything was starting to resolve at this point, though I was mistaken. LS flipped shit. You know how some opera singers can break glass with their voice? This kid would have a knack for something like that. Ellis was screaming as loud as humanly possible at this point, as he managed to reach into the tank. At last my manager had made his way out of the office and watching what was going on. Ellis grabbed a piece of live rock, accidentally grabbing a long-spine urchin. Angry screaming turned right to wails of pain as he pulled a rock out of the tank, a poor little pom-pom crab in tow. At this point I was less focused on the kid, but more focused on making sure my manager was calling 911, which he did. When I turned around, I saw something that still gives me nightmares to this day. The kid had been clutching his hand while his mother tried to help him. something hanging out of his mouth. The poor little pom-pom crab had been crushed by the kid, Ellis having shoved it into his mouth and chomping down on it, leaving a little claw hanging out of his mouth. The next 2 minutes was a strange combination of astonishment and panic. Myself telling the kid not to move his hand since he would break the spines off the urchin, while PF began hitting me with her crappy purse, screaming that I hurt her kid. Your kid shoved his hand into a tank, one with toxic animals nonetheless, fox-faced rabbitfish, and did this to himself. Calm the fuck down and leave him alone so when the paramedics get here they can get the spines out. How dare you? You expect me to let my angel suffer? If you just sold me the stupid fish, this would never have happened. Your kid reached into the tank and ate a crab. What the fuck did you teach this kid? Don't you ever tell me how to raise my angel. He had the right to eat that crab. You took something from him and he took something from you. By the end of this interaction, the paramedics had arrived, restraining the kid and taking him into an ambulance, as the police tried to sort things out. Unsurprisingly, PF tried to pin everything on me, saying I threw an urchin at him, and he ate the crab in a panic. Equally unsurprisingly, we had the entire thing on CCTV, including PF hitting me with her purse. Long story short, PF was arrested for aggravated assault, as apparently she had stuffed the rock into her bag to give it the extra punch. Didn't notice until after the paramedics saw me that I was bleeding on my leg from the jagged live rock. After getting a statement, the cops left. PF and LS going off to wherever the hell the cops took them, and I got out of everything with 8 stitches and a $300 bonus from my boss for handling the situation without anyone getting seriously injured. From what I ended up hearing, the kid had actually got stung by the foxface's dorsal spines, and that sent him into a blind rage. The mum got a plea deal, and she ended up with a huge fine, some jail time, and some other shit. In summary, I didn't sell EM a fish, kid flipped shit, grabbed an urchin, and ate a crab. Entitled mother got arrested for assault. This was by far the worst situation I had ever had in the store, and I still can't believe the outcome of this till this day. This was 3 years ago now. I was in work the other day when I saw a pouting kid over a mum not let him get a hippo tank, and this has been brought to the front of my mind ever since. Crazy entitled aunt and the Italian restaurant. This happened almost 40 years ago. I'm posting it as a thanks for reading the other stories. This one is more funny entitled rather than infuriating and entitled. My immediate family was, for the most part, perfectly normal and boring. We were not prone to outbursts and tantrums. It was very calm and quiet. Everyone got along and we were pretty happy with our boredom. I tell you that so you understand that I had absolutely no experience at all with people prone to screaming fits. You should also know that I suffer from a case of terminal morbid curiosity. I also don't give a shit. Never did. Never saw the fun in it. This happened when we were visiting for great auntie's funeral. I was 12. CA insisted that we all go out to dinner at her favourite Italian restaurant. It was just the best. She said so and she was never wrong. The gimmick here was a little flag of Italy on the table. When you wanted more dinner rolls, you raised the flag. This is important. Flag up, you get rolls. Flag down, no rolls. Remember that. The 6 of us are seated. They take our drink order and bring the bread basket. The cast has a new member, PU, for my poor long-suffering uncle, who will one day be made a saint for being married to CA for over 20 years. Some of you commented in my first post that he was an enabler. He wasn't, he was a victim as well. He couldn't leave her without leaving Emily. It started with the drink order. CA, we will have 5 sweet teas. Dad, I'll have a Coke. Mum, I'll have a Coke. Me, tea, no sugar. This is a mortal sin in the South. CA, don't be silly. You can't have sweet tea without sugar. I don't like sugar. That's stupid. Bring her sweet tea. Waitress winked at me. Yes, ma'am. PU. I think I'd like a Coke as well. Emily, I'd like a Coke. CA. We drink Pepsi, not Coke. Well, at least she's got some taste. We're having sweet tea. The waitress brought us our requested drinks. CA was growing agitated. But CA likes to control everything and everyone, so she told us what to order for dinner. I'm not going to get into an ethical debate here, but I refused to eat veal. She demanded we all have the veal. I refused. I knew this would set her off, but oh well, I'm not eating veal. My parents, after I'd explained to them years earlier why I would not eat veal, refused to eat it as well. Did I mention I get my I don't give a shit quality from my parents? Well, they didn't give a shit either. They were perfectly capable of ordering whatever hell they wanted, so they did. I had lasagna. It was good. My mother's was better. Once we ordered what we wanted, it emboldened PU and he stepped out of line and ordered something else as well. CA was not having it. CA, you were getting the veal. PU, no, I feel like something else tonight. CA, the veal is the best. I still want something else. You won't like it. I'm sure I will. You don't know what you were talking about. I know what I like. Well, you can't have it. Yes, I can. I said no. Well, I'm ordering it. You always get the veal. Because it's your favourite and you make me. I don't even like Italian food. Yes, you do. It's your favourite. PU, I want the lasagna. Damn it, PU, order what I tell you to order. No, lasagna. I love the lasagna too. You can't have that, you are allergic. No, I'm not. I'm your mother. I know what you can and can't eat. To the waitress, bring her the veal. The whole time this is going on, I'm looking from one to the other like watching a tennis match, back and forth, with the pitch of her voice getting more and more shrill with each sentence. I was fairly certain that when we left, bats would have been summoned. I'm just watching them and eating a dinner roll. The food arrives and everyone got what they wanted, even Emily, much to the fury of CA. Then it happens. PU raises the flag, CA puts it down. PU puts it back up, CA takes it back down. Up and down, up and down. I see the bread guy hovering at the edge of the table, waiting. Flag goes up and he rushes in to drop off the new basket before it can go back down. CA grabs the basket and throws it at the kid that delivered it. To save time and typing, every time CA speaks, the flag goes down. The rest of the time it goes up. You don't need any more bread, but I want more. I said no. I'm an adult and I can have more bread if I want. No, you can't. Why? Just tell me why I can't have more bread. Because I said so. You aren't listening to me. I'm hungry and want more bread. You wouldn't be if you had ordered the veal. Yes, I would. I always am, but you never let me have more bread. Tonight I get more. I want some more bread too. No, you've had enough. No, I really think I want more. Well, you are wrong. You seem upset. That's because you people aren't listening to me. Yes, we are. We just don't care. We want more bread. Dad, to me, well, try not to laugh at how absurd this is. You aren't helping. I think you want more. I think you want more bread too. This is fantastic. At this point, the whole damn place is watching our table and the battle over the flag. I'm fairly sure there were people taking bets to see who would win. In the middle of the confusion, a nice lady sitting at another table nearest Emily tapped her and slipped their fresh bread basket to her. Emily took a roll and slipped it to me. I took one and slipped it to my father. Then I went to my mother who, after taking a roll for herself, slipped one onto PU's plate. CA saw it and grabbed for it. PU was faster. He shoved the whole thing into his mouth at once. It was a big roll. The waitress approached the table to check to see if we needed anything. Xanax was unfortunately not on the menu, and CA demanded she bring the check. I want dessert. Chocolate cake. Sounds great, I'll have some. Me too. I'll have apple pie. I'll have cheesecake. Bring cheesecake for CA. She loves cheesecake. No, we're not having dessert. We are getting the check and leaving. Now. No, we aren't. Well, I'm leaving. You can all walk home. I drove. It's our car. I know. Give me the keys. No. You have to give me the keys. I live here. You are just visiting. Yes, I'm just visiting with my family in our car. It's my state. I don't care. It's my car and you can't have it. You're a terrible driver anyway. No, I'm not. You drove the wrong way on the freeway. No, I don't. It's the other... Oh, Jesus. No, I don't. It's the other cars going the wrong way. You get lost in your own neighbourhood. Not always. You're not driving my car. Yes, I am. No, you aren't. That, ladies and gentlemen, continued while we ate dessert, paid the cheque my father was buying. As we walked to the car, and for the entire trip back to their house, my father drove. We dropped them off and went back to our hotel room. Has your sister always been this crazy? No, it started when she was about 3. What happened? She started speaking in complete sentences. Entitled parents try to pimp me out to an entitled kid and try to ruin my life when I don't let them. This all happened around 10 years ago and takes place over the course of the absolute worst months of my life. I just turned 18 at the time, and thanks to my mum's gambling addiction, we lost the house that I'd lived in my entire life. Almost right after we lost the house, a family friend offered to let us stay at her house with her family, since her and her husband had a few extra rooms. We moved into their very large house, and at first things were great. Their family consisted of the entitled parents and their entitled kid, who was the same age as me. All of them were understanding and nice at first, offering to let me and my mum stay for as long as it would take for us to get back on our feet. Entitled mum even got me my first job, working as a volunteer at a bingo hall. It was all under the table kind of money, but I didn't care since it was money in my pocket that my mum wouldn't provide me. Entitled parents have been family friends for a very long time, and are absolutely enamoured with the idea of me and EK getting together, and have been ever since we were little. They constantly made comments like, "Look at the beautiful couple. You two look so great together," or "We'll give you lovebirds some privacy," whenever we were in the same place together. Despite me stating several times that I didn't like him in that way, they were determined to try to get us to work. like some kind of arranged marriage. I think that really fed into EK's ego, because about a month into my stay there is when the first incident happened. We were walking down the hall when he... Oh, blimey. We were walking down the hall when he smacks my arse from out of nowhere. I really freaked out and went off on him, yelling, cursing and giving him a few shoves. Our parents came upstairs to see what all the yelling was about, and we ended up getting separated. I told my mum what happened, and she responds by telling me it wasn't a big deal and to not rock the boat while we were living there. EK eventually gives some half-assed apology to me at dinner, and his dad made some joke about how he's relieved that he's finally taken an interest in girls, since they were starting to think he was gay. Things proceeded to escalate from there. Any chance entitled kid got, he would make lewd comments or find some way to grope me. Every time I went to his parents, it was always hand waved away as boys will be boys, or he probably didn't mean it that way. That he was a really sweet guy deep down, and I should get to know him better. On one occasion, entitled dad told me that I should be flattered. My mum was content to not do anything, enjoying the freeloading that got to feed her addiction too much, and telling me to stop playing hard to get. One day, entitled kid puts a hand down my shirt as I'm sitting on the couch, and I started yelling at him about how I'm sick of him doing stuff like this, and to never do it again. But he gave me the most terrifying glare and told me, "Shut up, you live in my house." After that, I was so terrified of being alone with him that I would stay after school for as long as I could until I was asked to leave. And if I ever had to go back to the house for any reason, I would just hide in my room with the door locked and wouldn't come out until I knew other people were around, since I didn't know if one day he was just going to force himself on me. Fast forward a few months and I'm told, not asked, that I'm going with entitled kid as his date to his senior prom, which is in a week. Entitled parents are super excited and tell me that we'll have the whole house to ourselves that night after we come back from the dance. I very quickly shut that down and tell them I'm not going because of how entitled kid treats me. And entitled parents spend the rest of the day doing everything they can to compel me. First they try telling me money isn't an issue, how they'll pay for my dress and ticket. When that doesn't work, they try to guilt trip me, telling me how they asked me for so little and how this is the least I can do, and how much EK would love it. Finally, my mum eventually hears about it after she comes home from the casino, and she's pissed. She tells me how I need to go, how it's such a big opportunity for the both of us, and how I need to tell the entitled parents that I changed my mind. I refuse, and the day after EK's prom is over, entitled parents sit me and my mum down for a talk. They start implementing new rules about how now they expect us to pitch in for all the amenities, how we're expected to buy our own food, and how they're going to start charging us for rent. Before all this, they were very adamant about us not paying for anything, wanting us to save money to get back on our feet, even without my mum spending half of all her checks at the casino. There was no way for us to afford what they were asking, and they subsequently gave us a month to find our own place and move out. We ended up moving out to live in a sketchy neighbourhood with some guy my mum was dating, whom she'd met at the casino. My mum blamed me for the entire thing, saying I blew a golden opportunity for both of us, how I basically threw away a great future that was all laid out for me because I wouldn't dance and put out. That cut me pretty deeply, and I still get angry thinking about it to this day. A few months later, I graduated, but my mum didn't show up to the ceremony. I come back to the house and all of my stuff is sitting on the curb next to the trash, and had been thoroughly picked through. I found out my key doesn't work anymore and nobody's picking up their phone. I end up waiting until about 3 a.m. for them to come back from the casino, and my mum tells me in so many words that I'm my own now. Nothing I say changes her mind, and I eventually pack what little of my stuff is left into my car. I spent the next month or two couch surfing or sleeping in my car while trying to pick up as many days as I could at work. Eventually I managed to save up enough to move into my first apartment with a roommate. I haven't spoken to my mum or the entitled parents since then, but recently my mum left me a voicemail asking if we could talk, since she doesn't like the way we left things. Since then, she's been blowing up my phone every day. I don't plan on ever taking her call. How I started a revolution in my entitled family. All I wanted was my sisters. I posted part of this in Am I the Arsehole, as I recently... I posted part of this in Am I the Arsehole, as a recent conflict I will bring up later left me doubting myself. But due to so many people's interests, I've decided to elaborate my family's boundless entitlement here. I'm currently in custody of my 2 little sisters, Amy, who is 17, and Lisa, who is 8. Not their real names for obvious reasons. I'm a 29 male and we live in Australia. I am Potato, and that's what Lisa calls me. And this is basically the story of how my family felt they were entitled to both of my sisters' bodies, and I wouldn't stand for that. I would like to warn anyone who has faced abuse in the past, as parts of the story may trigger some people. And to anyone who has faced abuse in the past, I do feel deeply sorry for you. This is going to be a lovely Christmas episode. The main part of the story takes place about a year ago. I'd moved out 6 years ago, and at the time, and moved to another state for work and study. I was honestly really slack with keeping contact with my family, which is probably why this went on so long. When I do think back to the time before I moved out, I didn't treat Amy the best, and if I hadn't moved out and had so little contact with my family, I may have turned out just as entitled and as much of a horrible person. I came back to visit for a grandparent's birthday. After spending so long away, I spent the morning catching up with my aunts, uncles, cousins, my parents of course, and Lisa. No, this was actually the first time I really realised the oddities of my family. Perhaps it was the change in environment. A few of my roommates had little sisters and whatnot after all, but it was the first time I'd noticed how quiet little girls of my family were. I guess I'd always just thought of Amy as shy and quiet, but my little cousins were so much the same, polite, shy, quiet and obedient. Though at the time I brushed this off. After a few hours, I realised that Amy was nowhere to be seen all day. The party was at my parents' house, so this confused me, and I slipped inside to see if she was cooped up in her room, like a lot of 16-year-olds would be, talking to friends or doing assessments. What I found is a memory that will haunt me forever. My oldest uncle, on my father's side, laying over my sister, who was quite clearly in a lot of pain and struggling not to cry as he pinned her beneath him. I completely lost it, as any brother would, shouting at him to get off her and out of her room. I scared the hell out of both of them, but in that moment I was honestly ready to kill my uncle. Amy was pretty messed up in the head when I tried consoling her. She was covered in scars, had a rash that I later found out was an allergic reaction. She was allergic to strawberries. She didn't speak and looked at me as she expected for me to hurt her, too. Her room was dimly lit, the blinds taped close to her wall, and all the things she had when I left were gone, leaving her bedroom feeling cold and empty. And to add insult to injury, she was a month pregnant. When I demanded an explanation from my parents, they, paraphrasing, said that it was my uncle's right, and my father simply pointed out one of my 11-year-old cousins sitting quietly with her parents and told me to, oh, fuck off. I stormed off back to Amy's room, quietly packed her a bag of necessities and managed to sneak her out of the house and into my car before doing the same with Lisa. Part of me wanted to get all of my cousins out too, but my main focus was of Amy right now, who sat trembling in the back of my car. I drove them both to the closest police station to report what was happening. I'll skip most of the details of the legal battle that ensued, but my family did not take kindly to being outed for what they were doing. It was a tradition that spanned generations, and there shouldn't be anything wrong with the tradition. Fuck me, that's disgusting. Amy and Lisa were put into the temporary foster care. Amy was wreck. To her, everyone could and would hurt her, and I got reports every few hours that she was having a panic attack. 3 of my uncles went to jail for a very long time. I got a fair bit of money out of a range of family members, full custody of both Amy and Lisa, no enforced visitation to their parents. My parents had to pay for any therapy costs, medication and medical needs for both of them. My family was torn in two by this, many of my aunts leaving their husbands with their children after finally having the courage to follow me. Uncles who had married into the family took their wives, who had also been abused, and cut off ties. I still keep in contact with these members of my family, and I'm grateful for their support and glad that my cousins are safer now. Even some of the older guys who had been brought up thinking it was okay to treat women that way took themselves into counselling once they realised just how messed up it was. And I've had more than one instance where they admit to hurting Amy and apologised, which I've accepted, as these cousins did their best to take their siblings or other cousins out of harmful environments. Now, I do believe some part of the ruling protected the younger men of the family, providing they see some form of mental health professional, as they grew up thinking this was all normal, so they didn't end up in jail, but did end up on some list of possible sex offenders, not entirely sure there. No one is sure who fathered Amy's child, but she had her pregnancy terminated as we were told her physical and mental health would not cope with carrying a baby she would ultimately unlikely care for. She did consent at the time, and it was brought up by her psychologist once she was doing better, and she confirmed that she would have no love for the baby due to the circumstances which she fell pregnant. For 6 years, Amy had been physically, sexually, mentally and emotionally abused in every way conceivable. This mostly came from my father's 4 brothers and brother-in-law who married into the family. My parents both stood by and let this happen, offering no support for Amy. During this case, my uncles argued it was their birthright being born into the family, and it was simply Amy's rite of passage, before she was married off to one of my uncle's mates at 18. They used her allergy as a form of torture and manipulation, wanting her to be silent and obedient. They would press strawberries against her skin any time she said a word, and force her to eat them when she stepped too far out of line. A lot of my aunts, from my father's side, admitted to enduring this treatment too, although most of them were lucky and didn't have allergies to exploit. That's so fucked up, so fucking disgusting. I honestly can't even begin to explain everything that was wrong with Amy because of their behaviour. Lisa, for the most part, was okay. She needed a little therapy as she was being groomed into compliance and taught that what she would experience was normal. But Amy had completely shut down. It took 2 months before I could even get her speaking. She trusts me now, and we often sit down, and I let her talk and open up about whatever she feels comfortable to. Her stories often have me struggling to hold back tears while I comfort her. I did get Amy a service dog a few months ago, tailored towards the emotional support she needs on a regular basis. Lickety Split is honestly the goodest of good doggos. She knows exactly when she needs, and is a massive help when it comes to calming Amy's anxiety, especially in public. We've had more than one encounter with unrelated entitled parents thinking they deserves the dog more than her. Let me know if you want these stories published too, because I've seen people like to read about service dog related incidents. But anyone who does think they can honestly fight me, no one deserves her dog more than her. On one occasion, one of my aunts, her husband went to jail, tried taking Lickety Split because their money paid for her. I told her if she ever comes near my property again, I would call the police, as there was a restraining order against her towards both my sisters. Later she came back and tried to poison Lickety Split with tainted meat, but one of my lovely neighbours caught her and chased her off. Police were called. She is now in jail too after having to pay a fine and some money to me because at this point I'm pretty well acquainted in the legal system and sued her. My family still try to get my sisters out of my care, reporting me from everything from animal abuse to drug trafficking. They planted drugs in an identical stuffed toy to Amy's comfort toy and left it in the yard. But Amy would never do that, so I knew something was up immediately. Home security systems work wonders. I've actually become pretty chummy with the local police officers who have to inspect their claims, but they know I'd never do anything to endanger my custody over the girls. They mean the world to me. I will admit though I've done things to hurt my bond with them, yelling when stressed and throwing things from time to time, but I'm not perfect. And Amy has told me that although these moments do scare her, she doesn't feel endangered being near me when they happen. I also spoil them a little when they do happen. Now, the reason they ended on AETA is because a few weeks ago my mother contacted me saying she wanted to talk. I was hesitant but agreed, and we met up in the next town over. No way I could be followed home. My mother explained how she was in the process of divorcing my father and she wanted to have a relationship with me and my sisters, with emphasis on mending her bond with Amy, who had not called her mum in years. She explained how she was pressured into the marriage after she had gotten pregnant with me and never wanted that life for her daughters. I flat out told her no, something several members of my family disagreed with, as she could have done literally anything to support Amy emotionally with what was happening. Done anything to make her feel better or more secure with what was happening to her, but instead she was shunned and isolated, except for when she was needed to cook, clean or provide some sort of service to the family. Even going as far as to berate her whenever she did try to confide in my mum that she was in pain or scared. Amy was well past her breaking point when I took her, and had even planned on killing herself less than a week after my visit. My mother argued that she had the same right as the other members of my family who had left her and had contact with my sisters. But I told her it was because they were doing it to protect their children and themselves. They didn't wait a year after losing custody to try and fight for them, and I really don't even need to give a reason. I have custody and she does not. Members of AETA convinced me that when Amy is in a better place mentally and Lisa is older, I'll bring it up with them. Leave the decision in their hands. I've been told Amy will be a dependent well after she turns 18. Her mind just doesn't function properly, so there's no risk of her mother getting into contact behind my back, even when she's an adult. And while Amy does have a phone and a computer, she doesn't have any social media, as she doesn't want any chance of her family trying to contact her, as they threatened her with many forms of torture in the past. This story doesn't have a slam dunk ending. I have my sisters and they're in a safe environment, where they'll get to grow up as kids. Amy is getting the help she needs and is slowly making her way out of the tower she built her to protect herself, in the only way she could, but she knows there isn't a rush to come out. I'll work with her at the pace she sets. She's still discovering her own interests, but quite like just reading a book with her form of fruity tea. She also has a small collection of stuffed animals, mostly Build-A-Bear, that she adores and takes one with her everywhere. She's sensitive to texture, so the feeling is a comfort to her. And once a week we sit down to try and find older bears she likes. We only have 3 Build-A-Bears on her wish list. And honestly, I've loved helping Amy discover herself. She lost a lot of her ability to think and feel for herself during this time. And watching her find her favourite book, genre, or her favourite types of music is a great feeling. Knowing how far she's come, and I live for the day she's actually managed to smile. Hey, thanks for watching to the end. If you want to leave a comment, go ahead. I always see them. I always enjoy engaging with them. You can subscribe if you want, if you choose to. No, there's no pressure to. Or you can click one of the other videos on the screen now. Or you may even have a favourite subreddit that you'd like covered.